So first thing we want to do is actually go into the EC2, the IAM console. Okay, so we're in the IAM management console, so just get there from services, administration and security, IAM. So the first thing we want to do is, when we've got a new account, we want to create a user. So we'll just go into users and we'll create ourselves a user. So create new users. So we're just going to call this user BackSpace Lab. And we want to make sure that we generate an access key for each user, so for this user. So we make sure that that is checked, and we click on Create. Okay, so we're going to get some security credentials created for us. So we click on Show those. So it's going to have an access key ID and a secret access key. So we need those for accessing our AWS services. So we do need to download those. So we download those credentials down here. And we'll save them somewhere safe. So we've downloaded those, and we can click on Close. And so there you can see we've got a user there being created. We can just click on that and see all the details are there. We've got doesn't have any permissions yet. So we could assign permissions through here, but that's not really the done thing. So what we will do is we'll create a group, and any users that go into that group will inherit the permissions of that group. So you might have a developers group, you might have a users group, you might have an administrators group, and whatever. And so those users that you put inside those groups will have the permissions associated with that group. So let's click on groups now, and we'll create that group. So create a new group, and we'll just call this one developers. So just copy that over there and put that in. And there's our developers. So the first thing we want to do now, or what we want to do next, is attach our policy which will contain the permissions for that group. So we're going to give administrator access here. So we'll select administrator access and click on next step. So just a review there, looks fine, developers, and we're giving administrator access, so we'll create the group. Okay, so there's our developers group. We can click on that, and we can see this group doesn't contain any users, but it has a policy attached to it. So we're halfway there. We've got the policy. We just need to get some users there. So what we can do now is we can add users to the group. So we can add our new user to that. So we click on Add Users to Group, and we'll select our BackSpace-Lab user that we created previously. We'll add that user to the group. And so there we can see that user is now into that group, and he's inherited those permissions. So if we go into that user now, and we click on there, and we have a look at that user, we can see that that user has now, this BackSpace-Lab user is now a part of this group developers. Because he's part of that group developers, he's inherited administrator access. And we have the security access key ID that's there. So we can create up to 2 of those, but we only need 1, so that's fine. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to create an EC2 server. So we want that EC2 server, which is going to have our NodeJS development environment on it. We want that to be able to access our AWS resources. So we want it to be able to access Amazon S3, Amazon DynamoDB, Amazon RDS, and all these services that are on our account. So we need to give that instance permission to do that. So the way we do that is with roles. So we create a role with that permission. So click on Create New Role, and we're going to call this EC2-admin. Okay, so once we've done that, we'll click on the next step. So what is the role that we're going to give for this policy? So the first one here, Amazon EC2. So that allows EC2 instances to call AWS services on your behalf. So that's what we want to do. We want an EC2 instance to be able to access our services on our behalf. So we'll select that one. Next, we need to attach a policy. So we'll give this one administrator access. So we're going to give an EC2 service administrator access. So click on next step, and just see there we've got the EC2 admin role name. We've got the ARN for that, which is a unique identifier for that role, and we'll need that later on. And the policy is administrator access. And create role. Okay, so we've created our role there, EC2 administrator access, and it's got their administrator access. So when we attach that to an EC2 instance, it will get administrator access. It will inherit that. So then we've got here the users and BackSpace Lab. He's a part of the developers group and has inherited administrator access permission as well. Okay, so we're just in the EC2 dashboard here, or EC2 console. So we get there through services, compute, and EC2. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is to create a security group. Now, a security group is like a firewall for our instances. So we need to create that first, and then we associate that security group to our instance. So we just go down here, network and security, and then security groups, and we click on create security group. Now we're going to call this one web server, and we're going to give it the description web server security group. Okay, and we're going to put it into our default VPC there. Now we're going to create inbound and outbound rules for this security group. So we click on add rules. So the first thing we're going to put in there is HTTP. So HTTP traffic, so 80, and that's coming in from anywhere. The next one is going to be port 443 or HTTPS, and that's coming in from anywhere as well. And then the next one will be a custom TCP rule, and that will be for port 8080. And a final one, which will be our SSH. So that will be port 22, and we want that to come from my IP. So we select my IP here, and we put that in there, and that will grab our IP address and put that in there. So so you can only access SSH from the IP where you're at. If you've got a dynamic IP, you'll just have to put in there anywhere. But if you've got a static IP like I have here, then you'll use that. And then we click on outbound rules. Okay, and we're just going to leave that as it is, all traffic outbound, so that's not a problem for us. And we click on create. And there's our web server security group being created. It's got our group description there. It's put into our default VPC, and it's been given a group ID there. So the next thing we want to do is to actually create our EC2 instance now. So we're going to just go to the EC2 dashboard, and we click on launch instance. So we could go in here and grab our Amazon Linux AMI or one of these other Linux AMIs, and we could put Node.js on that, and we could put the Express and the JavaScript SDK and whatever, and there's a fair bit of other work to be done as well. So we could do that, or we could get one that we've prepared earlier. So we go into Community AMIs, and there is one that I've prepared for you, which will save you a lot of time. So if you just search BackSpace, you should be able to find it. So go into Community AMIs, BackSpace, and there you have the BackSpace Academy NodeJS AMI. So this is going to have Node and Express already installed. It'll have a sample application on there. It'll have the AWS command line interface on there. It'll have the AWS NodeJS software development kit, and it will also have a few things already set up in Linux as well to run Node. So we select that, and we'll select the cheapest of all these options here, so the T2 Micro, and then we click on Next, Configure Instance Details. So number of instances will be 1. We're not going to be requesting any spot instances, so just ignore that. It will be going into our default VPC. We don't have any preference there for subnet as such. and we're going to auto assign a public IP. So we need a public IP to access our instance from the internet. Now the IAM role, now that is going to be our EC2 admin role. So we're going to associate at that EC2 admin role, and our EC2 instance will receive, will inherit administrator access. So we also want to protect against accidental termination. We're not going to do any CloudWatch monitoring or anything like that. We won't worry about tenancy. So what we do want to do now is go into advanced details. So there are a number of things that need to happen that we could do after we've created the EC2 instance, or even better, we can do it on startup. So when this is actually being created, we can set up our Linux firewall settings and that sort of stuff. So what we do is we've got user data here. So what we can do with that user data is we can put in a bash script, a Linux bash script, and that will run when the EC2 instance is created, and it will automatically configure that for us. So what we're going to do is just paste in a bash script that I've created. So that's just doing a yum update. This is a CentOS type of Linux distribution. So the AWS Linux, and then we're just going to set up our Linux firewall settings there. So next, add storage. That's fine. We're going to tag the instance. We're just going to call it NodeJS. Configure security group. So we've already created a security group. So it's saying here, assign a security group, create a new security group, and it's going to give us one that's going to give anywhere access with SSH and nothing else. So that's not suitable for us. So we selected an existing security group, and there's our web server security group that we created previously. So we're going to use that one there. And then we just click on review and launch. Okay, so just doing a review of everything there when we click on launch. Okay, so now what's asking us for is a key pair. So what we'll do is, I've already created a key pair here previously called backspace-lab. So you'll have to create your own one. So create a new key pair, call it backspace-lab or whatever you want to call it. But you need to download that key pair and download it to somewhere safe. I normally download and where AWS normally expects them to be is at C, in your C drive under key pairs. So you create new pair, download key pair, and do that. I've already created one here, so I'm going to use it, which is mine there. And then you click on launch instances. And there you go. So we've launched that instance, view instances, and there it is. Forget about the one there that's terminated. So we can actually filter these as well. So we just click on the filter. We can go into instance state, and we can do pending, and there's our pending one. And we can also put a there to also instance state. We can only see the running. So pending, when they're pending and running, we're going to show them. All those ones that are terminated previously we won't see. So after a certain amount of time, that will be created. Okay, so now our thanks to the magic of pre-recorded video, we've got our Node.js environment there up and running. So we can see there it's a T2 micro. It's up and running there. It's got its web server security group. It's also been associated or been allocated a public IP address. So we use this public IP address to access our instance from the internet. Okay, so once we've created our instance there, so we need to connect to that instance with SSH to run our code and whatever. So we're going to do that through PuTTY. So go to the PuTTY download page, and there's a link in the notes for that. The two files we need to get are PuTTY.exe and PuTTY.gen. So the PuTTY key generator and PuTTY itself. So once you've downloaded those, let's just open up the PuTTY.gen, PuTTY key generator. So what we need to do now is to load our key pairs. So when we created that EC2 instance, we created a key pair, and that's a .pem file. We would have saved that in our key pairs folder. So C key pairs, and then what you've got to look for is so just I've got some here that have already been done, so just ignore that. Just select all files instead of PPK. So just select all files, and we need to convert our PEM file to a PPK file. So we select our backspace lab .pem, and yours won't look like this, obviously. I've got a whole heap of them here. So backspace-lab PM, and we need to open that up. And it's saying we successfully imported that foreign key. And so what we need to do next is save that private key. And don't worry about a passphrase to protect it. And then we need to save that into there as backspace-lab.ppk. So we'll save that. I've already saved it though. So now that's our key generator has generated that putty key for us. So we'll just get out of that and we'll go into putty now. Okay, so there's instructions on how to do all this. So that's not a problem if you get lost. Just go to the notes and it's fully explained there. So the host name is going to be EC2 user at the IP address of your EC2 instance. So we'll go back into the EC2 management console, and we can see here our public IP. So that's a public IP for this one. So I'm going to copy that and bring that over into here and paste that in there. And it's going to be port 22. And so what we need to go to now is go into SSH on this tree here, select auth, and then we need to download our key pair. And so that's where I'm going to download this backspace-lab ppk key pair. And then we click on open. Okay, so we've connected in there to our Linux EC2 instance there. So what we'll do now is we'll just run a Node.js application that's on there. It's a very simple application, just to see that it's working. So we just cd into the Node.js sample directory. And then we'll run our Node.js application, which is just index.js. Okay, so that seems to be working. So if we point our browser towards that IP address of our server, we should get something coming up. And there we have it. It's hello world, not a problem. So that's all seems to be working fine there. Okay, so now we're going to look at setting up FileZilla to do SFTP transfers to upload files and whatever to your EC2 instance. So the way we set that up is, well, obviously first have to download and install FileZilla. Once we've done that, we can go into Edit Settings, and then we can go into Connection and SFTP. And we can add our key file, and that's the PPK file. So we get our backspace-lab PPK. I've already uploaded mine, but you upload yours and it'll come up in this list here. So backspace-lab PPK, which will be in your key pairs folder there. Once you've done that, you can just click on OK, and that will be set up. So you just put your host in there, which will be the IP address of your EC2 instance. Now, the username is going to be EC2-user. We don't need to have a password because we've provided a key pair, and the port is port 22 for access. So we just click on Quick Connect there. Okay, so we just do always trust this host. And there we go, we've actually connected in there, and there we can see we've got our Node.js sample in there. We can open that up. And there we can see here, there's our index.js and our node modules and everything that we would normally have. So that's FileZilla set up.